Today, combat flying demands planes that can perform with deadly effect at extreme altitudes. We have the planes that can do exactly that. We also have the type oxygen equipment which enables the pilots to go along with their planes. This consists of an individually issued Type 14 mask, the diluter demand regulator, and the oxygen cylinder. The diaphragm of the regulator responds to the pilot's breathing. This action trips the oxygen demand valve inside the mechanism, admitting oxygen as the pilot's lungs demand it. This is the demand feature. The blinker action shows the oxygen is coming through the regulator. From the deck on up and back again, except in special cases, the air valve lever is at on or normal oxygen, admitting air from the cockpit to dilute the oxygen and increase the oxygen endurance. This is the diluter feature. The diluter demand oxygen regulator is built to save oxygen, and it's simple to operate. It will take you high and far and make you as good as the planes you are flying. This is the way it works. A cylinder delivers oxygen through the regulator to the pilot. The regulator is the heart of the system, acting as a ration board for breathing, giving you oxygen from the cylinder only when you need it and in the proper amounts. Here is a simplified schematic diagram of the regulator as it responds to the pilot's breathing. As the lungs are compressed, the exhaled breath escapes through the vents in the mask, and with no demand for a breathing volume during exhalation, delivery of oxygen is automatically discontinued. This is how the diluter demand regulator supplies your breathing mixture. Oxygen is supplied here. Air enters here. The air valve lever is manually adjustable to two positions, which may be marked on or on some later model regulators, normal oxygen, and off. Or on the later model, 100% oxygen. In this position, no cockpit or outside air can enter the regulator. In the on position, the air valve port is open, permitting air to enter. For all normal flight conditions, the lever remains in the on position. The amount of air entering the regulator is controlled by an aneroid assembly. This consists of an evacuated metal bellows with a steel spring inside. It responds to the changes in atmospheric pressure at different altitudes, opening and closing the outside air inlet to the regulator. It permits a free flow of air at sea level and gradually closes with an increase in altitude until the airflow is completely stopped at approximately 30,000 feet, where 100% oxygen is needed to sustain life. If the regulator is properly set at on or normal oxygen, it will deliver practically straight air at sea level and proportionate increasing amounts of oxygen as higher altitude is attained. Here at sea level, the pilot breathes normally. Now at 20,000 feet, the bellows has expanded, restricting the flow of air. and causing a larger proportion of oxygen to be delivered through the oxygen demand valve. Yet the pilot is still breathing normally and receiving a proper and adequate breathing mixture. This blending of air and oxygen is brought about automatically and without the pilots noticing it. At approximately 30,000 feet, the atmospheric pressure is so low that the aneroid has expanded enough to shut off the air valve completely. Now, the slight suction of the pilot's breathing moves the diaphragm down, opening the demand valve and permitting the pilot to breathe pure oxygen, which is required at this altitude. As he exhales, the diaphragm moves upward, closing the oxygen valve. At this altitude, where the body needs 100% oxygen to compensate for the reduced atmospheric pressure, 100% oxygen is exactly what he is getting. At lower altitudes, the dilution of oxygen with air has increased the total endurance of the supply. Three features of the regulator have been omitted in previous diagrams for simplification. These are the check valve, which prevents air or oxygen from escaping back through the open air valve on exhalation, the pressure reducer, which lowers the high oxygen pressure coming from the cylinder to a working pressure for the regulator, and the emergency valve. With the emergency valve open, the oxygen bypasses all of the mechanism that might check it and rushes through the regulator constantly and unrestricted. It is used in emergencies only. The pressure drops rapidly when the emergency valve is open and the oxygen flows through the regulator unchecked. It won't last long this way. Enough, though, for a descent to below 10,000 feet or for a brief emergency period. Returning now to the diluter feature of your regulator, let's watch what happens to two pilots in a normal oxygen flight, one using the feature correctly, the other incorrectly. Now watch the flight of the oxygen cylinders, and you will get some idea of the results of not making proper use of the oxygen-saving diluter feature of your regulator. Both started with 1,800 pounds pressure in their oxygen cylinders. The section leader has his diluter lever set at on. His regulator will give him just the mixture he needs at all altitudes. But his wingman has his diluter lever at off, permitting no air to enter at any time, and giving him 100% oxygen for each breath, whether he needs it or not. This is desirable in some instances, but not in a normal oxygen hop. The section leader has plenty of oxygen to continue the flight, but his wingman is already out of oxygen because of improper use of his regulator, and he has to come down, while his section leader could go on for several more hours. And now let's take a mission from the start. You've got the word that you can expect the order to take off soon. But you still have time for your own personal check of your oxygen equipment. The latest technical orders and pilot's flight operation handbooks contain the oxygen equipment checkoff list. It covers the following points. First, make sure that the emergency valve is closed. You want a true check of the pressure in the cylinder and in the line to the regulator. Now for the oxygen. And it is up to standard pressure. Wait about 10 seconds till the pressure is equalized throughout the cylinder and the line. Now shut off the pressure from the cylinder and see how long it will maintain itself in the line. This is the test for leakage. 2 or 3 minutes will be enough to wait, and during that time you can test the fit of your mask. Inhale lightly with your thumb over the end of the breathing tube. Don't forget, your normal inhalation is gentle, so test your mask fit the same way. Now back to the oxygen line. The gauge needle has dropped. This becomes even more evident when the valve is opened. The needle jumps because the pressure in the line has fallen below that in the cylinder. A small amount of leakage is permissible. To determine if the leakage is excessive, note the pressure gauge reading with the valve still open, then close the valve again, and check it 5 minutes later. If the gauge needle drops more than 100 pounds in 5 minutes, there is excessive leakage, and the system must be repaired prior to takeoff on an oxygen flight. The mechanic checks the most likely points of leakage, such as the connection at the cylinder and the inlet to the regulator. Now, once again, he checks the gauge reading. In 5 minutes, no perceptible change. No change at all. All set. See that the quick disconnect coupling is fully engaged. This is important. Any force which moves the diaphragm causes oxygen to come into the regulator and up into the mask. This is a good test. The oxygen is coming through all right. You can even feel it come out through the vents when it builds up enough pressure to open the exhalation valve in the mask. The regulator in the on position delivers a small amount of oxygen even at sea level. This keeps the pilot one jump ahead of his actual oxygen needs all the way up. The emergency valve should be tested. When opened, the oxygen flow causes the diaphragm to remain in the expanded position and stops the movement of the flow indicator. You can feel the oxygen pour into the mask and escape through the vents. Turn the emergency valve off and breathe naturally. The final check for flow of oxygen is the flow indicator, which you will find in some planes. It will blink in time with your breathing as long as oxygen is coming through the regulator. This systematic pre-flight check of your oxygen equipment will improve your chances for a successful mission. 10,000 feet. Oxygen must be used from here on up. Again, check the fit of your mask and the rest of your oxygen equipment.
Red 1 to Red 2. What's the matter? Are you hit? This is Red 2. I don't think so. No?
No, he's not hit, but he's hurt. He didn't fit his mask right, and it leaks.
Red 2. What's wrong? I feel a little groggy. What's happened to the formation? Red 2, how about your oxygen? Listen, use your emergency valve. Use your emergency valve. Do you hear me? Roger. Over. Use your emergency valve. Go below 10,000 feet and return to base. Wilco.
A steady stream of 100% oxygen will take him down to an altitude where he doesn't need his mask. And now the battle has descended to a low altitude. There is no good reason why this pilot should have a headache. What seeps through here might well be carbon monoxide. You cannot smell this deadly gas, but other exhaust gases that enter the cockpit with it may be the warning. Here is one time when you want no air from the cockpit, so the regulator is turned to off. Only pure, undiluted oxygen on demand. No need here for the emergency valve, however. The eyes of man are not well adapted to seeing in the dark. Your already poor night vision is impaired even more by lack of oxygen. This impairment of vision at night occurs at altitudes below the usual daytime levels for oxygen use. On night flights, oxygen is the rule above 5,000 feet. But all you need do is maintain diluter-on oxygen conditions. Therefore, as in all cases, except when there is carbon monoxide in the cockpit, leave the diluter lever as it is, at on. Proper use of oxygen equipment has contributed to the success and safe return of this squadron. Diluter demand oxygen regulators are being installed in all carrier-based aircraft, and they are being used in every Navy plane that flies at high altitudes. In transport, bomber, or patrol-type planes not provided with enough permanent installations, individual diluter demand units are used. On flights of more than 4 hours, between 8 and 10,000 feet, oxygen is used for 15 minutes out of every hour. Here is an aviation equipment and survival officer. He is responsible for all matters pertaining to the use and maintenance of oxygen equipment. This officer supervises the installation and servicing of the equipment, and he instructs the pilots in the use of oxygen equipment.
Let's take a few minutes here to look it over. The Type 14 mask is a peach. It's the best oxygen mask we've ever had. It's made of soft, resilient rubber, and it comes in 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. So it'll fit anybody's face, no matter how oddly shaped it may be. And the Lord knows, we've had some really odd-shaped faces to fit. Noses are hardest to fit. Somehow or other, the human face has managed to get all kinds and sizes of noses put on it. But the Type 14 takes care of that. This adjustable nose wire can be bent to the exact shape of any nose. These adjustable suspension straps keep the mask firmly in place after it has been fitted. And these cheek flaps help the fit too. They also give you a better overall face coverage. Now the action is simple. When you exhale, your breath passes out through the exhalation valve and out these ports. When you inhale, the exhalation valve closes. And remember, the pressure inside the mask is never any greater than the atmospheric pressure of the altitude at which you're flying. The mask is also equipped with a cold shield to help prevent freezing at sub-zero temperatures you meet at high altitudes, and a built-in microphone. The quick disconnect coupling for hooking up the breathing tube to the mask tube is convenient. You see, this is an individual mask. You couple it to the regulator every time you get in your plane, so the fact that it's quick is a help. And if you ever have to bail out of your plane in a hurry, you'll appreciate that feature. So the weight of the tube won't pull on the mask, or perhaps disconnect this coupling. You have a strong clip here, which you should attach to your clothing or to your parachute harness. Well, there briefly is the Type 14 mask. It's a good mask, dependable in every way, and it does lend itself to individual use. Now, of course, it's important to fit the mask properly. Let me show you. Come up here, Bill, will you, and be a guinea pig. Will you hold that, please?
Is mine the worst-looking mug you could find?
Well, maybe not, but you'll do. Will you put your mask on? These suspension straps are adjustable, and these studs are individually fitted to your helmet. Fine. Always be sure the studs on your helmet are high enough to give you an upward pull. This will keep it from slipping off under a high G factor. Now next, if necessary, bend the nose wire carefully to be sure it fits. That feels about right, Bill? Well, now the mask should fit, but never take fit for granted. Test. One rough test is to put the thumb over the male disconnect at the end of the mask tubing here, then inhale gently. If there's no leakage, the mask will cling to the face and a definite resistance to inhalation will be felt. Feel it, Bill?
Yeah, she was really snuggling up to me.
Otherwise, there's a leak. Tighten the suspension straps or adjust the nose wire or both. Well, there you are, Bill. Keep it with the rest of your gear. And remember this. Your oxygen mask is just about as important to you as any piece of equipment in your plane, so treat it right. Keep it clean by washing it with mild soap and water. And every time you go up, test your regulator and test your mask. That's one good way you can help yourself. Remember, the Lord helps those who help themselves, so fly high and live.